I am not as eloquent as my other presenters. But the reason why I want to show the screen that I am is I want to show you, and because I want to give more time for questions, is the difference between one of my pre-rubrics and my post-rubrics. Now, the reason I'm showing this is actually for a very simple reason. I teach both, when I implemented for the standards-based grading, was both for human factors lab course and also a industrial engineering lab course. And I'm just showing for right now the two. And I was going to give a nice presentation slide with all this, but I know I only have very limited time. But this is the reason why I wanted to show it. You know, a lot of the discussion I've been hearing and heard about is that it was about the implementation. And my colleagues have been very eloquent about that. But I wanted to tell all of us and talk a bit about how do you get to this point? Because I think that was one thing I was noticing in our discussions, of that there was not a real understanding of how do I get to the point where we start actually incorporating something like an old grading system to a new grading system. Because we often get some things like this from the university. The way I did it, and I'll show you some of the rubrics also that went with this, is that I started thinking about what constituted mastery. What did I need students to be able to understand that this is, I guess you might say, to cut their chops on it. Because think about it, all of us as professionals, we've gone through many years of instruction. We know that we have to show a certain type of basic ability in different elements. And so trying to take, what we're doing is really interesting, because I had this discussion with many professors, is we know what constitutes mastery and people that just are kind of holding on and trying to pretend that they know what they're doing things. So in a sense, what's really happening, the way I hope you can talk about it to your colleagues, is think about saying, if you are my colleague, how do we know that someone actually has proven themselves to be part of our group? That if we were to have them as an expert, if we were to have them as a colleague serving on our college, how would we be able to do that? So often what will happen with us is that we will know by certain elements that are always there or are not there, certain languages. So that was one of the first things I had to think about when I was developing this out. And I hope that what will happen with you also is that you'll talk to your colleagues in that sense. What is it that they would consider is important for them to think about the student really got to that point, rather than that they make a weighted sum of these other things, which may or may not reach a point. So I'll give an example. The labs was the first one I thought about when I was thinking about my 2250 class. And when I thought about that, I said, wait a minute, what is, actually, let me back up, I forgot one little thing, is I remembered this because I was talking to a colleague that was in our cadre, and she was having a problem about what needed to be the grade levels, what she needed to do with this for labs and all that. She was also working on that. And I realized something that was interesting, and I thought about it for myself, is that there are certain things that you cannot compromise. They have to do it at a very good level, and if they don't, they're not showing any mastery. That was exactly why I started thinking about it on labs and lab quizzes. The labs show basic proficiency within my lab. And so therefore, they had to achieve at least a 90%. And that was what my colleagues thought. That shows that, hey, you are competent. However, watch what I did also with this. Both of these two, I had to ask myself, what's the difference between this and, let's say, an exam? I noticed that a lot of my exams with the students is that there were really good students that could do good lab work and do final projects. But the reason was they had time to develop them. Then I've had this conversation, I'm sure many of you have also had it, where their students did really good and they just bombed an exam. And that's because of maybe mental block and all that. And so what I had to start to do was weighing them versus what my experience had done to see what is it that's connecting them to get this certain expertise, which led me to finally this one. And this is the one that I thought was interesting because I got this idea from another colleague, is that when I started getting these, I realized I also need to figure out what their development levels were. That's where the checklists start coming in. And again, I'm showing this just because I just want to reduce my time to 5 minutes. Hopefully I'm getting that. The fact is that by doing this one, I was actually to see where were they progressing. So by the time I saw all these other numbers, I realized, were they superficial about their understanding the information so I could quantify these? That's where I got the idea. So the gist of this is all, when you're talking to colleagues, talk to them saying, okay, how do we know when someone, if we were judging, say, a PhD thing, a PhD dissertation, how would we figure if they knew what they were talking about? Or if we were talking about someone we were going to hire, how would we know that they're going to make it? This is exactly the same thing, the mentality that you can do to sell others. And I hate to use the word sell, but I noticed that many people, when we started doing this in the beginning, and I know you, Katrina, we were talking about this a lot in the spring, what exactly do we have to translate to get this done? And I'm going to end it with that. I mean, if anybody wants to see the rubrics, because they don't have any other questions, I'll be more than happy to show you some of my rubrics. But I was kind of I sneak in. I got to tell you, Danya, I apologize again. I don't know how many times I can apologize. I was supposed to be yesterday. For some reason, I thought it was today. Okay, but thank you.